Imagine walking into a room where silence is broken only by the steady hiss of machines keeping children alive. This haunting photo from the 1950s shows rows of iron lungs at the Rancho Los Amigos Respiratory Center in Los Angeles, each one holding a young victim of polio. For many, these steel chambers became prisons, days, months, even years spent unable to breathe without them. It's a chilling reminder of how fragile life once was, and how close humanity stood to despair, until science and vaccines finally turned the tide against this devastating disease. He was the king of rock and roll, 24 years old, adored worldwide. She was just 14, a freshman in high school, when their paths crossed in 1959. This rare photo captures Elvis Presley and Priscilla in the early days of a relationship that still stirs debate. When she nervously admitted her age, Elvis reportedly replied, "Why? You're just a baby." Yet soon, she was swept into his world, 3 years later moving into Graceland at only 17. Behind the glamour lies a story that forces us to question the cost of fame, power, and the innocence lost along the way. Months before the world changed forever, a warning was given, one that could have altered history. This rare photograph shows Ahmad Shah Massoud, the Afghan commander and intelligence figure who tried to alert the West about a massive terrorist attack being planned by al-Qaeda. His voice was dismissed, and on September 9, 2001, he was assassinated by agents directly linked to Osama bin Laden, just 2 days before September 11th. Looking into this image now, it's impossible not to wonder, what if the warning had been heard? How many lives could have been saved from the tragedy that followed? Scrawled in lipstick across a wall, a message that still chills history. For heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself. This haunting image comes from December 11th, 1945, at the Pine Grove Hotel in Chicago, where Frances Brown was found brutally murdered, a bread knife lodged in her neck. The note, left by the man who would be called the lipstick killer, is more than evidence. It's a terrifying window into a mind consumed by violence. Decades later, the words remain etched in true crime history, a desperate confession, or a twisted taunt. Imagine boarding a flight where women weren't even allowed, except to serve the men on board. From 1953 to 1970, United Airlines actually offered men-only flights, and this rare photograph captures that surreal era. On these journeys, businessmen smoked cigars, drank whiskey, and even received gifts, all while stewardesses catered exclusively to them. It was marketed as luxury, but today it feels more like a time capsule of inequality, when the skies weren't friendly to everyone. Looking back, this image forces us to ask, was it really sophistication, or just another reminder of who held power midair? It looks almost ordinary, a man in a suit typing on a clunky laptop. But this moment in 1993 marked history. President Bill Clinton composing the very first presidential email. At a time when the internet was still a mystery to most Americans, this simple keystroke symbolized the dawn of a new era, when world leaders would connect not just through speeches and television, but through the digital frontier. What feels routine today was once groundbreaking, a glimpse into a future no one fully understood. In this quiet image, the weight of history rests not on paper, but in pixels. Before the crown, before the global spotlight, she was simply Miss Spencer, a young woman working at a nursery school. This rare photograph from September 1980 shows Diana walking with 2 children in her care, an image that, at the time, sparked a minor scandal just months before her wedding to Prince Charles. Some saw it as inappropriate, others as refreshingly human. But in hindsight, it was a glimpse of the compassion that would define her legacy. Long before she became the people's princess, Diana's heart for children was already shaping the woman the world would come to love. These scars are not just wounds, they are history carved into flesh. This photograph from Hiroshima in 1947 shows a man who survived the atomic bomb, his body forever marked by fire hotter than the sun. Each line across his skin tells the story of August 6, 1945, when an entire city was consumed in an instant. Yet behind the devastation, his face shows something extraordinary: resilience. He lived on, carrying the weight of a world forever changed. This image forces us to confront both the horror of destruction and the unbreakable strength of human survival. She had a voice that defined a generation: warm, powerful, unforgettable. Cass Elliot, the beloved face of the mamas and the papas, lit up the stage in the 1960s, but behind the music was a life marked by heartbreak, struggles with self-image, and battles with addiction. In 1974, she was gone at just 32. Yet the tragedy deepened when an urban legend cruelly reduced her legacy to a myth: that she died choking on a ham sandwich. This haunting photo is a reminder of the truth. Her voice was her gift, her story was complex, and her impact was everlasting. What does it take to keep a legend comfortable? This rare list reveals the backstage world of Frank Sinatra, OL Blue Eyes himself. From bottles of vodka, gin, and Jack Daniels, to chicken salad sandwiches with minimum mayo, cartons of unfiltered Camels, Evian water, and even a private telephone line, Sinatra's dressing room was as carefully curated as his performances. It wasn't just luxury, it was ritual. Every detail, from cough drops to ivory soap, reflected a man who demanded control in a world where chaos followed fame. This paper isn't just a list, it's a glimpse into the life of an icon. A frozen moment in time, 1908. This haunting photograph by Edward Curtis captures two Native Americans on horseback, wrapped in blankets, standing quietly in the snow before their teepee. More than just an image, it's a glimpse into a way of life already under siege. By then, centuries of displacement, broken treaties, and forced assimilation had threatened to erase cultures that had thrived for generations. Yet here, in the stillness of winter, dignity and resilience shine through. It's not just a picture of survival. It's a reminder of endurance, identity, and a spirit that refused to be silenced by history. It may look like a costume today, but in 1912 this was the cutting edge of women's sportswear. This rare photograph shows a young woman proudly wearing her basketball uniform, long stockings, bloomer shorts, and a sailor-style blouse. At a time when women were expected to stay on the sidelines, stepping onto the court was an act of quiet rebellion. Every stitch of that outfit tells a story of change, of breaking boundaries, of daring to play, of refusing to be confined. It wasn't just a game of basketball, it was the beginning of a fight for equality. They were just boys, yet in 1943, Germany lined them up in uniforms, helmets too big for their heads, and called them soldiers. This haunting photograph shows members of the Hitler Youth serving in the Luftwaffe Auxiliary Service, trained to support a war they barely understood. Many were as young as 15, taught loyalty before they ever knew freedom, handed weapons instead of dreams. Behind their rigid stares hides fear, innocence stolen by ideology. This image is more than history. It's a warning of how far a regime will go to sacrifice its future by consuming its own children. History has a cruel way of echoing itself. This photograph from June 1940 shows German soldiers removing the very train carriage where the World War I armistice had been signed in 1918, once a symbol of Germany's humiliation. Hitler ordered it taken from a Paris museum so it could be used again, this time to force France's surrender in World War II. The message was chillingly clear. What was once defeat had now become revenge. This image is not just about a war. It's about memory, pride, and the dangerous power of history when it's used as a weapon. Her gaze cuts through time, calm, proud, unshaken. This photograph from Ireland in 1913 shows a young woman dressed in traditional clothing, her bare feet resting on the earth, her shawl draped with quiet dignity. More than a portrait, it's a testament to identity in a country still struggling under hardship and colonial rule. Every thread of her garment whispers resilience. Every detail a reminder of heritage carried through centuries. In her eyes, we see both defiance and grace, the spirit of a people unwilling to let their culture fade, even in the shadow of history's storms. Once hailed as a hero, now standing as a traitor. This haunting image from July 30th, 1945, shows Philippe Pétain on trial for treason at the Palais de Justice in Paris. Just decades earlier, he was celebrated for leading France to victory at Verdun in World War I. But in World War II, he became the head of Vichy France, collaborating with Nazi Germany. The weight of betrayal hangs heavy in his posture. A man who had once embodied national pride, now remembered for surrender and shame. It's a stark reminder of how history can crown and condemn the same figure. Before smartphones, before cars ruled every street, joy looked like this. Two young people on a roller skating date in Berlin, 1905. Dressed in their finest, he in a suit and straw hat, she in a long white dress and extravagant hat, they glide hand in hand with elegance and laughter. What feels modern, a carefree date on wheels, was, at the time, a daring trend sweeping Europe. This rare photograph captures more than just movement. It captures freedom, romance, and a glimpse of a world discovering new ways to play. A century later, the magic of youth on wheels still feels timeless. Forget soda or candy. Back in 1960, some vending machines dispensed gin and tonic. This rare photograph captures a group of men curiously lining up to try one of these bizarre machines, a symbol of both post-war innovation and indulgence. With just a coin, you could get an ice-cold cocktail on the spot, no bartender required. It feels almost unthinkable today, but at the time, it was marketed as modern convenience. Looking at their cautious excitement, we're reminded how quickly culture shifts. What once seemed futuristic now feels reckless, a quirky snapshot of an era experimenting with leisure and excess. This isn't 2020, it's 1918. In the middle of the Spanish flu pandemic, San Francisco became one of the first U.S. cities to enforce mask mandates. This rare photograph shows a police officer arresting two men for refusing to wear theirs, right outside a bustling streetcar station. Back then, masks were called muzzles by critics, and protests erupted against what some saw as government overreach. More than a century later, the image feels eerily familiar, a reminder that history repeats itself, that fear and resistance echo through time, and that even in crisis, society always struggles between freedom and responsibility.